Welcome back to the GCN Racing News Show. Coming up this week, massive attack. How Mads Pedersen had the week of his career in an astonishing show of strength and consistency. I'll also look back at the Vuelta a Burgos, Tour de Limousin, Arctic Race of Norway and Tour de l'Avenir, and ponder a week in which a Jumbo-Visma rider has been suspended due to a positive test, and in which Team Sky's legacy took a rather large dent in the face of a 4-year doping ban handed to its former doctor, Richard Freeman. This week in the world of racing, we learnt that Jumbo-Visma are ready for the start of La Vuelta. They won the 13-kilometre Vuelta a Burgos TTT by 19 seconds over Team Movistar, setting up Primož Roglič for the overall win. More on that later. We also learned that Benoit Cosnefroy was not happy with Lewis Askey for what he saw as an illegal manoeuvre on the finishing straight at the Tour de Limousin. Most people thought he had himself to blame though, trying to get into a gap that simply wasn't there. And finally, we learnt, or were reminded, that Mads Pedersen is a beast on a bike. He took 3 wins in 2 days at the weekend, the final stage and the GC at the Tour of Denmark, and 24 hours later, a prestigious one-day win at the MSC Classics in Hamburg. And it wasn't just the wins that were impressive, it was the manner in which he took them and the consistency he showed all week. I'll start with Denmark. So the opening stage was won by Søren Varensholt with a late attack. It came at the end of a very aggressive race, and as such a good time trialist, it put the Norwegian in a fantastic place for the GC. His problem was Lidl Trek, who really worked him over on stage 3. Pedersen and Skjelmose were both in the small front group and attacking the race leader at almost every opportunity. Eventually, Pedersen got away, and the only man who could catch him was his teammate Skjelmose, who would go on to win the stage and lead the GC. You did have to feel for Varensholt though, who succumbed to a puncture at the worst possible moment. I mean, I think he would have lost the jersey that day anyway, but it would have been nice to see what he could have done to defend it. Pedersen closed to 4 seconds of his teammate by finishing runner-up to Fabio Jakobsen on stage 4 and taking the bonus seconds with that. But the GC would all come down to the final day's TT, 16 kilometres and pan flat. Well, Pedersen annihilated everyone there, averaging over 54 kilometres per hour and putting 24 seconds into the next best rider, who was Varensholt. Now, over that sort of distance, that is just, well, domination, really. So 3 rides in the top 5 that day for Lidl Trek, plus the top 2 places on GC. But for Pedersen, that week wasn't done. Later that day, he flew down to Germany for the MSC Classics. Now, it's not a monument, this one-day race, but it's a tough one with a decent amount of history. 206 k's long, with a few berg-type hills near the finish, and it was around those finishing loops that 3 riders got away. 3 very strong riders at that: Niels Pollitt, Brandon McNulty and Yves Lampaert. They eked out a maximum advantage of 17 seconds, but with Jayco, Jumbo, Lidl and later other teams chasing behind, that started to come back down. I've got to say, it was a cracking race to watch live. There's nothing quite like that will they, won't they, when you've got a strong group out front and sprinters teams chasing behind. On this occasion, though, I don't think anyone could have predicted what did happen. The trio were caught, but they were caught first by Mads Pedersen, who launched from the peloton with around about 800 metres to go in what was a proper old-school attack. And not only did he catch and pass the trio, he managed to hold the bunch behind at bay as well. Only just though, and for a moment, I was a bit worried that he'd celebrated too early, but he had done it ahead of a disappointed Danny van Poppel of Bora Hansgrohe. So, 6 race days for Pedersen last week, 3 wins, and never outside the top 5. What an incredible week he had. But I genuinely loved that ride from him yesterday. It was canny, it was daring, and it was thrilling to watch. Basically everything that bike racing should be. Fantastic stuff. Meanwhile, at Burgos, Primož Roglič was his usual rock-solid self. That guy just never seems to go into any race without the form to win, does he? The opening day was won in a sprint by one of the few sprinters attending, Milano of UAE, whilst Jumbo-Visma took that TTT victory on stage 2. UAE were the most active in trying to work over Roglič on stage 3, but they couldn't shake him. He ended up working with Adam Yates,